Thanks, Rachel. Um, okay, and we'll start off with some introductions and get straight into the webinar. So my name is Rajni. I am a project coordinator for inclusion and climate justice and education, working at SOS UK on the race support project. And I'll hand over to Rachel.
Hi everyone, I'm Rachel. I'm the Head of Research and Impact at SOS UK, and I've been overseeing all of the data collection side of things on the race report.
Thank you. Okay. So the agenda of today's webinar is broken down into a couple of sections. So first we'll be explaining what the race report is and its aims, how it works and the developments we have for 2024, how we'll be analysing the data and how to collect the data for the race report within your organisation, how to submit your data to the race report, our 2024 support offer and wider opportunities. And finally, we'll end with a Q&A session with an opportunity for you to ask questions directly to us. So why was the race report launched and what are its aims? So the race report was launched in 2022 alongside research which demonstrated a continued lack of racial and ethnic diversity in environment and conservation professions. The research carried out by SOS UK and sponsored by IEMA and NERC found that environmental professionals were made up of 4.8% of people identifying as Black, Asian, or other minority ethnic backgrounds, compared to the average 12.6% for all professions when looking at the data from the Office of National Statistics. So from this graph here that I've described some of the figures, it displays that the environment, climate, sustainability and conservation sector is one of the least diverse in the country. And from this, we must try harder to become more representative of the communities as a sector are working to serve. It is vital we work together to achieve this, and that's why the race report was created. So for the aims of the race report, they are around creating transparency as an impetus to go further and faster on diversity and inclusion, working with the sector to create step change, and providing a space for sharing practice. And this all links back to speeding up diversity and inclusion in the environmental sector. So a little bit how it works for the next couple of slides. So essentially, we also ran the race report last year in 2023, and we'll be continuing with it this year. So from the main race report, the diversity data collection, similar to last year, we'll be duplicating it, mirroring what we did last year to this year, around the diversity data collection, the aggregated reports, and the individual transparency cards. Last year, we ran the staff perception survey, which is being ran biannually and will be rerun in 2025. So that was around survey research with staff working in participating organisations and their perceptions of organisational culture around diversity and inclusion, and that was published as a single aggregated report. For this year, we are introducing the Intersectional data pilot, which is around additional diversity data submitted by organisations cross-tabulated to show intersectional characteristics, and this will be included within the main aggregated report only. So just a reminder on the transparency cards. So the information included on the cards depends on the organisation size according to staff headcount. So there are two categories of transparency cards. The first one is around small organisations with under 30 staff for their headcount, and the standard category, which is 30 and above staff based on their headcount. No base sizes are given, and percentages range used to protect small groups and individuals within organisations of any size. No data from the Intersectional data pilot will be published on individual transparency cards, and there's an opportunity in the data submission form to note any outstanding concerns around publication of your data. So just a bit of a breakdown of the cards. So for small organisations under 30 staff, for the individual transparency card, only section A will be displayed on the card with section C. For the report of small organizations, section A, B, and C will be displayed, and this will be aggregating data across all organizations with no organizations being named. For the standard organization transparency card type for 30 and above headcount, section A, B, and C will be published on their individual transparency card, and similar to the main report, aggregating data across all organizations, but your organization won't be named. And just a little bit below, section A, B, and C, a bit of a breakdown of what that contains. For section A, that is administration and organization characteristics. Section B is diversity data, and section C is around policy, strategy, and action for your organization. I'll hand it over to my colleague, Rachel.
Thanks, Virginie. So yeah, the main development for 2024 is kind of the purpose of this webinar. And we'll come back to this in a bit more detail later in the presentation, but just to give you a brief outline of what the plan is this year. So yeah, we are introducing this pilot as a means of further increasing transparency. So it will enable us to understand in a bit more detail who is and isn't represented in the sector, and works on the basis that, as everyone knows, one characteristic alone doesn't define your experience of your workplace. So we've chosen 3 characteristics to include in the pilot. So we hope to analyse the race and ethnicity data that's the standard part of the data collection against age, gender, and disability. So as Virginie mentioned previously, but just to confirm that the data from the intersectional pilot won't be featured on your individual transparency card, just because in these scenarios we're likely to get down to quite small sample sizes, and again that's the kind of try to mitigate that risk of individual people being identified, so it won't be included at that individual transparency card level. How it will be presented is in the main report, and it will be an aggregation of all the organisations that opt into the pilot. So yeah, we'll come back to a bit more detail on kind of some of the processes and like tools you can use to help you reach that data that we're looking for a bit later on, but I'm just going to quickly hand back over to Rajni to talk you through some of the submission steps.
Cool. Thanks, Rachel. So yeah, I'll be going through a couple extra slides. I'm completing your data submission to the race report. Okay, so there are 3 stages to submitting your data. Stage 1 would be reviewing the list of data points required for the data submission. Stage 2 is collecting or collating your data for your organization. And the final stage is submitting your data via the online data collection form, which will be on our website. So the race report data points are grouped into 3 sections, as previously mentioned, section A, section B, and section C. So section A is around your administration and organization characteristics. So that's around charity name, funder name, type of organization, and total number of staff. Section B is around race and ethnicity data for your staff and governance bodies where applicable, and this is mandatory, same with section A. So this is around gender identity, age, ethnicity of permanent staff, non-permanent staff, trustees, senior managers, and etc. And the final section C, which is information on your policy, strategy, and action on diversity and inclusion. This is optional, but we strongly encourage all organizations to fill in this section of the data form. So a full copy of the individual data points under these 3 sections can be found on the race report website. I'll hand them back over to Rachel.
Cool. So just a couple of tips and kind of requests from us in terms of collecting and submitting your data. If you're an organisation that already does this, please try to submit as much data as possible. This helps us build as full a picture as we can on diversity across the sector. Really strongly recommend, if you're new to this process, and also kind of revisiting things, obviously, if you've taken part in previous years, to review the data that you have against our data points. We have tried to design them to encompass the variety of different methods and tools that organisations might use, but we know that with the number of organisations taking part, there's likely to be kind of some discrepancies. So there might be some kind of reanalysis of the data needed, or combining that kind of thing to align things. So get in touch with us if that's the situation you're in, and we can talk through what the best solution to that and to help you submit your data. If you're new to collecting data about your staff, we've got some resources that might help. So we have a staff survey template that you can use to develop your data collection practices. You can find that in the resources section of our website. It's a set of questions that ask people about their kind of demographic characteristics. You can use those in an existing staff survey that you might run, or obviously there's a chance to make a bespoke survey or build them into other data collection that you might use. For example, at SOS UK, we collect data at the point of entry to the organisation through equalities monitoring forms at the job application stage. They cover a whole range of different protected characteristics and identities, and they're designed to support your wider work on EDI as well as your participation in the race report. So you might see some questions in there in that staff template that we don't ask for in the race report submission, and that's why there's that discrepancy. So I'm going to move on to a bit more on the analysis of the data for the intersectional data pilot. So just to kind of try and bring it to life a bit about what we mean, and using this example. So you might have 5 members of staff who identify as Arab, and in the past that's all you've submitted to the race report. But within that kind of identity category, there might be 3 members of staff who identify as women, 1 who identifies as a man, and 1 who identifies as non-binary. And that's the kind of information that we're asking for as part of this intersectional data pilot. So yeah, I hope that kind of brings it to life a bit. As I mentioned before, with the cross tabulations that we're looking for are on age, gender, and disability. So we already ask organisations for data on the age and gender identity of their staff. These are our control measures that we use. Disability is a new characteristic that we're introducing for the data pilot, and that was chosen due to kind of the growing evidence base that this is a kind of identity that's faced exclusion from the sector. So we know that organisations have lots of different ways of collecting the data, and so there are different ways that the analysis will be taken place. But just to try and again kind of help with the process, we thought it might be useful just to do a bit of an example demonstration of how you might do this if you've got your data in Excel. So I'm just going to ask Brittany to stop sharing her screen, and then I will share mine. So we can have a look at how you might go about this. Cool. So here is a spreadsheet of data from an imaginary organisation. You can see that they've used questions on age, race and ethnicity, gender identity, disability status, the kind of nature of their role, whether it's permanent or non-permanent, and whether their role requires them to manage other staff. So no matter how you've collected your data, you can actually set up a spreadsheet like this. to help with the analysis. So if you've collected data via survey, normally survey programs give you the opportunity to export the data into Excel. So your job's done for you. As I mentioned at SOS UK, we collect through equalities monitoring forms, and that is in individual documents. So we have a bit of an extra admin task to put it in a spreadsheet to allow us to do this analysis. But once you've got everything in a spreadsheet, what you can do is create a pivot table. Again, people might be quite familiar with this tool, but just in case you're not, I'm going to do a bit of an example run through. Just need to move this bar from my screen. Basically, to get to a pivot table, if you don't already know, you just highlight the data that you want to analyze, go to insert, and then there's the pivot table option here. You click on that, basically press OK. That's already been done here, and basically you'll end up with this screen which has the titles of all the different questions that you've asked in a list here. These are called the fields that you're including in your analysis. So yeah, everything that you've highlighted, all the column headings, should appear in this list. It's good practice when you're kind of setting up your table to make it a different color and a bold, because it helps. Personally, I find it helps you visually, like identify different rows of data, but it also helps Excel understand that that's a heading, and so that to include that in this kind of main field category. So what you can do then is just kind of drag and drop things into these different options. And this is where I've been having fear about doing this live on screen, because I actually don't use this tool very often, but hopefully it will go according to plan. So here, as an example, we'll put the race and ethnicity data into the rows, and that will give you all the different categories. Obviously, that's only telling you the different categories that people have selected. So you want to know some numbers. So you drag the same question into the values, and that will give you an automatic count of however many people in that selection on the other sheet selected this answer category. So then you kind of want to look at things in the cross-tabulation format. So you can do that via two different ways. You can drag the thing that you want to cross-tabulate race and ethnicity against into the filter tab, and what that does is create like an extra row up here. And then you can use this as a drop down. Tick this bit at the bottom to show that you need to select different options, but then you actually want to unselect all, and you just want the responses for people who are 18 to 24. So that filters everybody else out, and this is just the data for people who are 18 to 24. You can change that to any different category, and that will adjust the data automatically. If we go back to all, then it sets it back for all responses. So you can do it that way. There is another way that you can do it. So if you press this into your columns, it's not the most user-friendly table, but you can see what it's done here is make a column for each of the different age categories. It's still got the grand total at the end for each of the different racial or ethnic identities, but it's broken that grand total down into each of the different age categories. So you can see here that the number of staff who identify as having any other white background and who are 24 to 25 to 34 is 3. So it's automatically done that cross tabulation for you, and has done that for all of the different age categories and racial identities. So once you finish looking at that age cross break, you can just unselect the age group data and keep the race and ethnicity in your rows and values fields, and then you can select the next category that you want to look at. Say that might be gender identity. You just again drag that into the columns field and it automatically performs that calculation for you. So yeah, that's in a nutshell a really simple tool that you can use in Excel to get to the data that we're looking for from your submission this year if you're taking part in the intersectional data pilot. Once you've done that kind of pivot table approach, you can, if you want some extra reassurance, go back to your original table and use kind of column filters to double check things. So you can filter your data to just select the 18-24-year-olds, and then if you want to see how many are in a particular identity, you just select the identity you want to look at, and you can see there's only one member of staff in that identity. You can go back to your pivot table and see if that works out. So hopefully this is the test. We are looking at Asian or Asian British Chinese identity. That's here. And we can see that there's one member of staff who's identified as a woman, and that lines up with this data. So you can do those little checks just if you're not trusting your pivot table skills. So yeah, I'll stop sharing that now. If it's useful, we can share that example spreadsheet with you, just in case you want to have a play around, test the data yourself with an example. So yeah, drop us a message afterwards and let us know, or just drop a message in the chat here if that's something that you will find useful, and we'll get that over to you along with the recording of this webinar. So yeah, just to continue with the presentation, we're going to have a quick go back to the presentation, and then I'm actually going to share another thing with you in a second. But yeah, just before we get on to that, just a reminder that the Intersectional Data Pilot is open to all organisations taking part in the data submission process in 2024. Final reminder, obviously we felt it important to hammer this point home because we put it in here 3 times, that only the data that you submit through this will only feature in the aggregated report. No organisation names will feature alongside any intersectional data. We're always here to answer your questions if you have any further queries related to this, specifically after this webinar. Just get in touch via the usual email address, and we'll do our best to help, particularly if you've got data in a different format, didn't find that Excel demonstration useful at all, definitely get in touch and we'll be happy to work with you to work out how you get to that data. So once you've gone through all that process, collecting your data for the normal submission, but also for this intersectional data pilot, it's really useful to collate everything together, so you can match it up against our data points and also check everything adds up. You may have used our data collation tool before, but if not, we would really strongly recommend doing that, just because you may have found if you've taken part in previous years, we may have got in touch with you related to queries with your data submission, and this tool we've added a few further instructions based on those common queries that we have with organisations, and some features like auto calculations to help you check through your data before you submit it and make sure it all adds up. For example, the number of staff reported in the individual racial and ethnic categories adds up to the total number of staff in the category that you're reporting for. So yeah, I'll just quickly share my screen again so you can see what that looks like if you haven't used it before. Also point out where the intersectional data pilot is. So the spreadsheet mirrors the data submission form exactly. There's columns for you to add your data. In some cases it'll be text. In some cases where it's like a kind of choice option in the actual survey, you can just put whatever marker you like to indicate which response you're going to give. But you'll see we've also added some instructions on kind of what the data is that we're asking for and how we're going to use it. So hopefully that will help you understand kind of what data needs to go where in the data submission form. If I just scroll down to where you actually find some data, like actual raw data submit. So this is an example of the age category here. You can see that some data is already added in, and there's a total check function that adds up all those responses for you. So see it will automatically adjust if I add new data in. And so you can use that to check that this number here adds up to the total headcount that you've told us about earlier in the data submission. So yeah, we've added that for all of the questions in the form. You'll see if I just scroll down quickly, when we get to the section on the intersectional data pilot, we've got some questions in our data submission form, which lets you know that, lets us know whether you're taking part. If you're not taking part, the form will take you to the next relevant section and not take you through all of these questions. But again, it's the same process. So adding your data for each of the different identities, you can see this mirrors that pivot table that I demonstrated. And the same like totals checks are built in to the form with different instructions, as well as to kind of what we're asking for, what to check for, and what data to put where. So hopefully, again, that's a useful tool. So we really would strongly encourage you to use that data collation tool. It's on our resources page. So once you've collected your data, analysed it, checked it in the data collation tool, hopefully you should be ready to submit. When you're ready to do that, you can go to our website, and we've now got a handy green submit button on the top bar. So if you click that, it will take you to the online submission form. Just to note that unfortunately the form doesn't have the capability of saving the data as you fill it in, so it does need to be completed all in one go. So do make sure you have everything to hand before you start that submission, and also you have enough time to get everything into the form. So I'll just go through some of the other support options and kind of wider opportunities that we have as part of the campaign this year. So we've got a range of different support options to help you collect and submit the data. So we've got these monthly support webinars. This has been a special version of that for the intersectional data pilot, but we have other kind of more general support webinars ongoing each month up until the submission deadline. We're happy to have one calls with your organisation, organise bespoke webinars for your organisation staff, or if you're a network organisation, your members. We have a monthly newsletter, so if you don't receive that already, do sign up. There's a option to do so on our website. We've got a quite in-depth FAQs section on the website, and all the resources that we've already mentioned today. And if there's still something that's missing as a result of all of those options, we're always here at the end of an email. So do just drop a line with anything specific that you haven't been able to find an answer to. So just a quick reference, because unfortunately we've sold out of tickets, so if you haven't registered yet, then we can't actually offer you a ticket, but we have got a waiting list in case people have a change of plan and aren't able to make it, and tickets become available. So if you haven't got a ticket yet and would like to be added to that waiting list, just drop us a message at the normal email address. And finally, just a couple of key dates as a reminder. So obviously we opened submissions back in April. We've got a couple of months left before submissions close on the 11th of October. But a small request from the team that if you can submit your data sooner rather than later, please do. It's always a really busy time of year around submissions deadline. So if you're in a position to submit it earlier, it would be a great help for the team if you could do so. We're planning to publish the report for the 2024 campaign in line with Race Equality Week 2025, which starts on the 3rd of February. So that's the intended publication date for the report for 2025, and we'll kind of work through the same process we did last year with multiple opportunities for you to feed in and review the reports and also the communications that are released around that publication. Finally, I've stopped talking and give you the chance to ask any questions. We've actually set this up as a webinar, so if you want to type a question, you can in the chat, or if you'd rather ask verbally, I know sometimes with a data thing, it's easier to ask verbally. So just let us know and we will either kind of unmute you or convert you to a panelist so you can talk. I think if you've got a raise hand function, you can also do that if that's useful. I think we'll actually stop recording now in case anyone asks any questions that are specific to your organisation that is not appropriate for sharing more widely.